Welcome back to the I'm Out Here show. My name is Jeremy, and I am a liver disease survivor, um, severe cirrhosis of the liver, all due to alcoholism and some very severe drinking for a number of years. This is my YouTube channel, my podcast. Depends on how you're getting this right now, and it's just me opening up about my life, my story. I believe I have a somewhat interesting life. I know I have a lot of interesting friends, and they are my biggest supporters with this, and they keep telling me that I'm headed in the right direction. So we're going to keep going. In the previous two episodes, if you had a chance to listen to or watch both of those, we spoke a lot about, or I spoke about the origin story of my sobriety, where it came from, and um, some of the different things that occurred both at the time that I had become sick, as well as uh, you know the year or so after beating all the odds and getting to go home from the hospital and things like that. Um, when I say beating the odds, I remember a doctor entering the room and telling me almost verbatim, "You need a transplant last year." Well, we can't go back in time, but the liver is it's the only regenerative organ within the body. I believe that's correct. Go ahead and fact check me. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. But at a certain point, you'll damage that organ to a point where it can't recover. It can't, you know, regenerate. And by all accounts, mine was there. And well, I'm still here. And I did not have a transplant. That was 4 years ago. 4 years ago this month, September, it's 2025. I became sick. When I say I became sick, it was the multiple organ shutdown, liver and the kidneys. And so with this month, September, now being here, I don't know the specific day. Um, all I know is at the time, you'll have to go back to those other episodes and listen to those stories as to why I don't know the specific day, what was going on around those, that time. But this month marks 4 years of sobriety for me. If I had one of those little sample machines, I would hit the clap button. Maybe that I'll put that in post. Um, so, uh, thank you for being here, and thank you for at least listening this this long or watching long. Now, um, I'm going to talk a little bit today about, or well, tonight about sobriety being a superpower. Um, some different views from my recovery journey, and some of the cultural stuff that surrounds it. Um, there's some stigmas and there's some misinformation out there uh, that I would really love to be able to clear the air on. I just need a big enough platform. That's another part of this. Now, when I say sobriety being a superpower, um, it's to mean um, you're using an incredible amount of strength that you you may not have known that you had before when you're faced with trying to defeat alcoholism. And when normal people like us do extraordinary things, a lot of people refer to it as being, or some sort of superhuman trait that a person possesses. You know, we've all heard the crazy stories about people pulling up on an accident scene and lifting cars off of people. Like this true superhuman capability there. This not so much a heroic thing like that in sobriety and in the strength that comes or is required. A lot of things that come with that. It's messy every day, but it's also a very very real thing, and it's an unavoidable uh, crossroads that you'll come to. Because at a certain point, alcoholism will have affected so much of your life, from jobs to relationships, um, your stability at home, just a myriad of things. Um, it'll turn your whole world upside down. Um, very, very messy, very real, and it's real life. So you have to face it. You have to um, find those superhuman traits within yourself. Those superpowers that you're going to have to latch onto and utilize. One of mine, I suppose, one of my superpowers is my patience. And patience will take you very, very far in battling alcoholism, or really any substance abuse, anything that has become a vice or has a grip on you like that. Um, Patience will be a huge, huge asset. It's a very, very nice tool to have on the belt, because you have to be patient in all sorts of areas, not just with yourself, but you have to be patient with people around you. Um, that's one of the areas where I actually kind of fall short in my patience, is with others. Um, you can call it whatever you want. Maybe it comes from the law enforcement background. Maybe it comes from just going through, some pretty traumatic things in life, or being faced with a lot of um, a lot of adversities. Whether it be something I brought on myself, or hey, I don't know how to do this thing, and no one ever taught me. Um, it it will, and I'm sorry to pause like that, but like I say, patience. The um the big thing that patience allows for me to do when being considerate towards others is, well, let me backtrack a little bit there. When being considerate towards others and exercising patience, it's it's really important to at least try to put yourself in their shoes, when you are the, in lack of better terms, the abuser, and we're speaking on alcohol here. When you are the abuser of alcohol, and it has just really enveloped your life, and it's starting to affect those around you, when when you get onto that sober side, let's say, because I've had a number of friends reach out to me in the past few weeks here, talking about how many days, even how many hours they're sober, which is all wins, no matter how small, are all always a win. Um, when you get to that sober side, even if it is just 1 hour, and you're interacting with someone who cares deeply about you, um, or let's say that you're a month in, which is an incredibly long time, for a lot, for most, being sober. Um, when you're interacting with the ones that care the most about you, who are the closest to you, um, they are experiencing a different version of you nearly every day, because every day that you get under your belt as a sober day starts to become empowering, and rightfully so. It's ammunition that you should definitely hold on to. And at a certain point, you've got all the answers, or you feel like. I felt like. At a certain point, you say, I'm too tough for it, or I thought I was too tough. And the person that's viewing this, your friend, wants so badly for you to be 110% correct, that you are too strong for this. That it is behind you. But they've only met that version of you today. And tomorrow, with a little bit more strength, a little bit more empowerment behind you, a little more momentum, maybe I should say, they're going to meet yet another version of you. And so it's kind of like establishing trust, because I know that a lot of my closest people, friends and family, um, it wasn't just respect that they lost for me. Um, but it was a huge amount of trust that was just gone. Um, I wasn't. I mean, here I am, sober. Let's say it was 6 months into my sobriety, and I'm still not, getting access to my son the way that I used to, which was every other weekend, and during the summer, a week at a time or something like that. Just very, very fluid, very much, keep the kid happy, and us parents are, co-parenting great. And that was while I was a drunk, but a very high functioning drunk. And even still, the trust was gone 6 months in. And so I'm wondering, I've made it 6 months. That's a huge accomplishment for me. What are you talking about? And it took me a while to realize that it do not take the last 60 seconds of what I was speaking on as my son was being withheld from me or anything like that. We were having, me and his mother were having very, very real conversations about, I'm not out of the woods yet. I was still having some pretty severe spells. Um, I was, you know, falling over every now and again, passing out. Just some crazy stuff was going on. And so, yes, absolutely. I did not need to have my, see, he was 6 ish at the time, son, 5. I didn't need to have him 48, 72 hours a week by myself. I couldn't care for myself. I had one of my best friends drop me off. I said, man, just bring me some Vienna weenies, and I can survive on that. I was bare necessities. Bare necessities. Don't get me flagged for that. It it was a gut punch because it brought into frame how not only was I not out of the woods, but the damage that I had done over the course of several years. Um, just an incredible amount of really just destruction in the wake. And when it all starts to come to a head like that, and you everything gets put into frame, your perspective starts to adjust a little bit, um, and you start to see more objectively from the outside what you are responsible for in your past, and you see it very clearly, and the guilt arrives and the shame arrives, and it won't go away, and it just nags at you, and it gnaws at you, and it chews, and it just is in your ear. It's a storm. It is that train sound you hear when a tornado is creeping up into your area. That roar, that unstoppable wind and debris. That's what's going on when you are battling alcoholism and you are reaching the other side. You are finding the sober side. And when you are able to take every hit and survive that wind and make it through that storm, no matter what you look like on the other side, so long as you make it through, that is a superhuman move. That's being a superhero right there. For everyone that loves you, you are being a superhero. You got to think about that. Um, I talk about the turmoil and things there, and how that storm kind of rolls through. And I mentioned it being a tornado, and that kind of does that really does go hand in hand with a lot of destruction being left in its path in the wake of that storm. Um, that's exactly what occurred in my life. That it was as if the neighborhood of Jeremy just got leveled. Not a stud sticking up out of nowhere. Not a wall left. No chimneys. No cars in the drives. They're all off in the trees. Trees are ripped up. That was my neighborhood at the time that my storm came. And I'm looking around, and you wonder, well, why hasn't this been affected? Why hasn't this over here been affected? And that perspective and that clarity starts to kind of bottleneck and get, and tunnel vision you straight down onto some harsh facts. Um, some moments that you cause come back up. You have to face them. Conversations that you forgot. You got to have, you know, you got to go back through them again in your head, and that's part of the trauma. And so within my neighborhood, looking at it, just laid out and destroyed, uh, you'll find that I speak in metaphors like that a lot, or maybe it's an analogy, whatever you want to call it. You notice that the debris that left, or I noticed that the debris that left my neighborhood, that destruction, everything, every stud that got ripped out, every roof that was ripped off, every brick, every tree that ripped out of the ground landed somewhere. It's kind of like, a hunter being responsible for the bullet in their gun even after it leaves until it stops. They're responsible for it. So all that debris, it was all stuff that I'd collected throughout my life, and it was a lot of it was clutter and non-meaningful things. Alcoholism had made me think that women or money, some sort of status, something, being the life of the party, the funniest guy in the room, sometimes the drunkest guy. A lot of that happened, with music, being the drunkest guy at the after party. And it you realize that, or I did, that all of that stuff that I thought was important that I'd collected over the years, um, from wanting to have a great paying job that would allow me to purchase this vehicle or live in this neighborhood, um, the relationships. I mean, there were two women living in my house at one time, at one point. And, that's a whole can of worms right there in itself. But I think that any man and any woman that's listening to this that, maybe was more of a partier, heavy drinker, some of that stuff, uh, I'm sure is common ground. I don't even have to go into the majority of it there. Questions will come up later on. I'll answer them in later episodes, which I intend to do. But that collateral damage is something that it will haunt you. And it has, even though I am coming up on 4 years of sobriety, uh, in my sober mind now, my memory is sharp as a tack on a lot of things. And the recollection of certain moments that I'd totally forgotten about and just disbanded from my memory, they came back and they were very vivid. And and having a memory that seems to just keep getting better, and having past things come up and seem to haunt me, it creates some shame and a little bit of self-doubt, a lot of disappointment in myself. But just like I mentioned before with each hour even being a win, uh, when it comes to sobriety, I think about far I've how far I've come since I was that guy, because I look at who I was, and I remember the things that I would do, the things I would say, my demeanor, how I would respond in certain situations, and it was really unhealthy. Uh, I at one point, uh, being a musician, I was part of this band that I got involved with, was one of the founding members actually, when I was 15 years old, and I'd started playing guitar for this band, and later on became the bassist, uh, because the bassist that we had went to prison for DWI, driving while intoxicated. And you would think that I would look at some of these things and think, oh, don't do that. Well, I went and did all those things. I've actually been arrested twice for DWI. There's only just been one conviction. But back to that band and everything. I remember very later on in my career with them, we had actually, I guess you would call it, separated in a way, but we had stopped, and we always had this group chat that stayed alive, and we would talk in it for like, you know half an hour once every 6 months, maybe every year. And at one point, the topic came up about, let's get back together and play some music and have a reunion show. And we actually wound up booking it and got together, and we were going through the rehearsals. We were, kind of building out the show, what we wanted to do. And I would show up to rehearsal with this big uh, tumbler, big Yeti cup, and it would be full of. I would either pour. I think it held like three 12-ounce beers. It was a big one. It was huge. I would either have that, and then I would keep more in the truck for when that ran out. Plus a couple beers on the way. Um, I would either have that or it would be full of vodka and a little bit of Sprite, maybe. Uh, I don't remember what else I would mix with back then, but very much not good. And so we get to, and some of the guys say, hey man, you're playing this wrong, or I could tell that they would get frustrated if I would miss this, these same hits, because it was a pretty dynamic show. If I would miss these hits during the rehearsals, too many times or repetitively, they're like, hey, maybe if you didn't, and they would kind of say it jokingly because I think that's about as when it comes to guys calling out their buddies on drinking, it 9 times out of 10 it's always in this joking way, you know, kind of like calling your friend a dummy in a joking way because you can get away with that. Ah, you dummy. You say, you drunk as hell. You remember falling over, ha 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 ha, and it gets laughed off or something. Or when they say, no, hell no, we couldn't understand what you were saying because you were too drunk. Or you don't remember that, you must have been too drunk. But it's never, hey man, we wanted to have a conversation with you because we think that you've got some habits that might be starting to affect you in some serious ways, and we're looking out for you. That's not how it ever comes up. And that's not to blame anyone either, because it is all on yourself. It's just alcoholism is very tricky, and it's a liar, and it'll tell you that you don't have the disease. So you're fighting this losing battle. But back to it. We've got the show booked. We're getting things together. We've got the set list put together. I'm running some contests online for like free tickets and things, and it's looking like we're gonna have a really good turnout. And we did. We had a great turnout. It was a packed house from what I recall. But here is the problem: I showed up drunk, and this is when I had them two ladies living with me at the same time. And we would sit around and kind of party like it. We would have some drinks pretty much every day, and it bled over into that day. And I remember I left work early, saying that I needed to go be setting up just so I could grab my gear, get down there, and start the pregame for the show, have some drinks. Now you have to understand when I say I went down there early to have some drinks, and pregame, or use the excuse of, oh, they're hiring us for a reunion show, everyone thinks we're so cool. I went down there and I got hammered before the show. I had carried all my stuff down there with me. I think I had the same bass cabinet and everything I have now, big Texas flag on the front of it. But I carried it down there, I got it set up, and the girls kept bringing me drinks into the green room. And they had asked me, like, do you need anything in your green room for this show? And I was like, no, not really. Just beer and, some shots or whatever. And I'll eat a eat a cheeseburger or something before the show. Now, I distinctly remember the guitar player's face, Danny. He said, He said, "Worms." He he looked at, and this was probably an hour before we went on. We had finished sound check, and he said, "Man, I can see it on your face." And I said, "No." And he looked at me and went, "Worms. Eat something." So, girls brought me a cheeseburger. I think I ate most of it, if not all of it. And then we're playing the show, and the crowd has no idea that I've already taken it this far. Um, they didn't find out until they had brought me a handful more shots and a couple more beers, and I was drinking dark beer at the time. I think I was still on a Shiner kick. And they found out real quick that Jay was hammered when he fell on the stage and made a complete fool out of myself. And the guys on stage made them look real bad. I mean, we had been doing this. We'd gotten together at the beginning in 2004, 2005, maybe a little earlier than that. I believe our first album come out in 2005. We practiced for a straight year before we even thought about going into the studio or playing a real show. It felt like, but I made them look real bad. And I think that show was back in like 2019. So 15 years. And same stupid behavior on my part. And that could have been a really good show. Still could be. Now, you fast forward to not much long ago, and I'm playing a show that is, it's not a benefit, but there have been arrangements made for, this party to show up, and it's a very meaningful night, for a particular person. And the guy that hired me was the same one that was looking me in the face, and 15 years into playing music together, he's looking me in the face and saying, "Worms, you're drunk. You need to eat. This ain't good." And that's back in 2019. You fast forward to just this year, and we're trying to pull off this show of me, him, and the drummer from that old band, and his and this guy's son, and a fiddle player, trying to pull off this hired gun act for a very meaningful night. And we're all talented guys. You should be able to point to us and say, "This song, this key, kick it off," and we're good. We had played together, each of us on that stage that night, dozens and dozens, hundreds of times. And I look over, and that same guy that was calling me out for being too drunk to play, you know, just 6 or so years prior, see him giving the telltale sign of he's had a little bit too much. And here I am sober. And it's 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 a it's a difficult thing to to view these things going on, to see it happen, and to know, that someone's having some issues with it themselves, and you want to reach out and you want to help them, and you hope that you know I hope that what I'm doing is doing us some good, on his part. Um, I've got a lot of friends that I worry about, and that kind of that leads me into the next part of, um, if there is, if I can challenge anybody listening to this, whether or not you know me, or uh, you do, you're a friend of mine, and you're one of my core supporters here. Um, no matter what it is that you're doing, if you're listening to this just to support, thank you so much. If you're here for the talk, great, hang in there. You're doing really, really awesome so far. Now, what is one thing that you could do that would be like a very small next step for you to work towards, instead of a giant leap? Um, we like to I say all that because, or I'm leading into this because these some of these friends that I concern myself with and I worry about on a daily basis, um, or maybe it's family, or maybe it's just acquaintances that I see often because of other acquaintances, other friendships. I I can sense when people are kind of wanting to follow along, um, wanting to join me on this journey, but maybe from the shadows, which is totally fine. That's totally cool. Just know that I support you 100%, 110%. Um, Now, if that does sound like you, give this, give this a like, drop a comment, um, even just to say hi. You don't have to say, hey, yeah, that's me. You can just say, hey, keep doing what you're doing. That would mean a lot to me. But I want you to know that success and recovery, and it's not a linear thing. There's no graph to go along and watch that trend go up. That doesn't exist. What recovery looks like is resilience, it's strength. And that looks like, even when that graph takes a dive, you know that it will be coming back up. It's just getting there that you have to work towards, whatever it is. Um, there are going to be many, many times where it is, it feels like two steps backwards, and only one forward. A lot of that is going to happen, but it's so much worth getting to the other side of it, and getting back onto one of those highs. That's the best way I can explain it. Is that the success and sobriety is not a linear thing. It's not a graph that goes up. It's going to be valleys and highs. You're going to have your low points and you're going to have your high points. It goes way back to the old saying of, you have to, whatever it is, you have to endure the rainy days to appreciate the sunny days. Um, Now you got weirdos out there like me who love a rainy day. But maybe that's because I know that I'm going to be gifted a sunshiny day at some point, or I hope. Because, of course, I can't guarantee that I'm going to be gifted another day. I can only hope for another day. But maybe that's why I love a rainy day, so I can look forward to the sunshine. And so you take those challenges and you take those dips head on. And it's just building momentum going down that hill to get back up the next. You have to. So think about, a small step that you could take maybe this week, this month, um, no matter how small. But sure, pick something big in the distance, a giant goal in distance, and break it down into just brass tacks. What the very very small things that must be done for me to even start to accomplish step one. You start your day, you have to put on your pants one leg at a time. Before you can run a race, you have to tie your shoes. There's very small steps that we normally don't think about. Brushing your teeth in the morning, uh, stopping to check the mail before you pull into the drive when you get home. Grabbing that, uh, cup and scooping dog food out and throwing it in their bowl mid conversation with your significant other about what y'all are going to do for supper. Very small things that we do just on autopilot. But pick something that works towards something and leave me a comment below for that. Let me know what you're going to do. Um, Now, it's not easy to sit and talk about the shame and things like that. Just harping on myself. So I'll talk a little bit about, like I said, the culture aspect of it, which is going out for drinks. When you're meeting somebody, um, say for the first time, or you're meeting up with friends. Um, it's just always this gather around thing that that people adhere to so much, and it's not so much an icebreaker, but it's like this social lubricant. It's something heavily used amongst friends. Uh, Whether it be guys going out and shooting pool and hitting on women and drinking, or going dancing. Do y'all even do that anymore? Um, Women going out having drinks with their friends, coworkers, even. It's the social water fountain at work, except it's out here. And it's not. I don't want it to sound judgy again, but it's just not something that's really necessary in those situations, because you're you know that you're putting on a mask. It's finally Friday. I get to go out and have some drinks, and I don't have to be this corporate person anymore. Which that's not you at home, of course not. But is you at home always someone with a drink in your hand either? I wouldn't think so. I would hope not. Um, if you think that that's cool to be that person, I invite you to come hang out and do other things. But when I think about gathering around now, and another thing with getting off work on a Friday and saying, "Oh, I get to go out and have some drinks," a lot of people will look at that as you know, an opportunity to cut loose, to you know, actually pretend to be somebody else, whatever the case may be. And well, anyway, for now with when I think about gathering and things, um, I think of well, that's what I was gonna say with they're having cravings. It's cravings essentially. Yeah, because it's habit. If every Friday you're getting off work and you're going to have drinks, and you're having that feeling at 4 o'clock, oh, 1 hour left, I get to go home and get ready and put on some smell good and go to the bar or go out to eat or whatever the case is and go have some drinks. Finally, it's a craving because you have this, so many people have the same reaction when their smoke break is about to come up. Vacation is around the corner. Finally, you know, it's a craving. But in alcoholism, it's a habit. And so with those cravings, you have to well, you have to find something else for them. But anyway, when I think about gatherings, I think about other kind of gatherings that I miss. Um, I guess I could actually speak on cravings with that. I I think about what Thanksgiving used to be like with my family. Um, Before my mother passed, um, those holidays were very I wouldn't call it sacred to the family. You know, but it was very uncommon for us to all get together for an occasion, whether it be someone's birthday or something like that. Typically, those were phone calls and someone might stop by, but like letters in the mail and things. Yes, we still sent letters in the mail. And I would love actually to send letters in the mail these days. So if you would like a letter from me, let me know. Drop a comment here or reach out on one of the social medias. Um, oh goodness, lost my train of thought there. But we used to not gather so much for the smaller, I say smaller things, birthdays and things like that. But the larger holidays like Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, not so much. Um, but I guess really, if there was going to be an excuse to have a good meal, we were showing up for that one. And now, after my mother passed, I think the very same year, later on that year, Thanksgiving and Christmas came around, and I don't remember us getting together, and I don't think we have since. Not that I recall. Um, and I have being in September, I have not heard of plans for any of that to change this year. Um, but you talk about cravings, and I would crave, another another Thanksgiving or another Thanksgiving meal rather with the family, and Christmas, getting to see they're all grown now. See all the kids open presents. And if your family was anything, or is anything like mine was, we were the kind that kept like those Saturday morning cartoons alive. Public broadcast, TV. Um, and so moments like that, I say that because we were very, I guess you could call it old school, but moments like that were big for us. Um, we didn't have we didn't have a go on a family cruise. We didn't do anything like that. In fact, the only thing we ever did that I really recall was as a very small child. I might have been 4 or 5 years old. I think we went to Six Flags, and I didn't get to do anything. But Thanksgivings, Christmases, um, any time that my mother would cook for those, I would crave her pumpkin pie. She had a secret recipe. Turns out it's the most simple secret you could ever think of. She also had a secret recipe for her cornbread stuffing, which the recipe came to be by accident. Um, Apparently, if you put like a little bit too much sage in it, that's how I prefer it. Um, and I think I actually did kind of get my way when it came to stuff like that. Um, oh gosh, Dozer's back here just sleeping away. And those are the kind of things that I would crave, and so we kept little traditional things like that alive. Um, as far as our family's traditions, which would be those few events a year, and then you think about how few of those events you actually had. It's not much more opportunity than for about a dozen of them. People miss a few, or you're not old enough to remember a few, and then you're grown and you have your own family. And so now, um, it, because I've removed myself from this cultural, you know, going out to drink, to have fun and meet people and this, that, and the other, I've isolated myself in a way that has made it difficult for me to, even think about developing, a family, uh, surrounding my son and I. And so those traditions, those opportunities for me to uh, have my son have the same kind of memories are finite. They will come to an end. And so for me, I crave the comfort. I crave the the love and the time spent with those you care about most. those are my cravings these days. And I wish more people would crave those things than they do being loud, obnoxious, bumbling, incoherent at times. And that's not everybody. If you're listening to this, you're watching this, and you're very well in control of your alcohol intake, and you are one that might have a glass of wine or a beer with your supper, whatever. Like I've always said, I'm not here to judge and I'm not here to preach. I'm only here to share my story. And there's when I talk about those moments being so precious for my family, as small as my family is, uh, I just want for those of us who still remember those times when things were simpler to defend those things. And the best way to do that is within yourself of how do I be more like that? Sure, technology is crazy and people say that we're more spread out because we're more connected. And that's the most frustrating thing uh, here sometimes because we are not connected like we used to be. So focus on the the core memories that you've got, and think about how those look today in the sense of uh, if I'm going to talk about how I miss the old days, am I living by the set of values that I had during those old days? Am I mean, sure, we're all older now, but to say that is to say we should be more mature, and we should be more forward thinking in our actions. Thinking about consequences 2 and 3, steps down the road. But in conclusion, think on those things, and if any of it, if any of that resonates with you, let me know. Drop a comment, and if I can think of a big goal for myself, I would like to start putting a better foot forward with initiating these gatherings, whether it be with just one other person or a group of people, and that might be just to get together with somebody that I haven't seen in a while and we catch up, or it might be a group where we share some ideas and some thoughts, or we just go bowling. But I I would like to start taking at least a small step towards that big goal of being much more connected to those around me in a much more meaningful way. So let's think on how you're going to um, take a step and what that big goal might be. But remembering that even just accomplishing one step, 1 hour, 1 day, whatever it is, every small win counts just as much as a big one. And share your story through social media if you feel so inclined. Use the hashtag I'm out here. That's a neat way for myself to be able to search things up and find it and reach out to people, which is something that I love to do. And of course, be sure to like and subscribe to these things and visit the store on the website www.imounthere.com/shop. But I guess in closing, let's just for this week think on more healthy gathering and craving the right things. Um, because when you crave the right things and you fight for those things, it gives you a foundation to be that superhero and to get through those storms. So y'all keep doing what y'all are doing. Everyone out there that has reached out over the last few days and weeks to speak on your milestones with your sobriety, I'm so very proud of you. I'm beyond happy for everybody. It's a huge thing. So small wins count. Keep them coming, and we'll see you on the next one. For now, well, Dozer and I are out here. Peace. Hey y'all, it's Jeremy. Thanks for sticking around. And if any part of this message resonates with you or you think it might resonate with someone else, be sure to stop by the website www.imounthere.com or just check on the link in the description below. For now, I'm out here. Peace.